The past few times I've edited this have been disastrous. But hello, you're listening to Don't Listen to This, podcast all about 1,001 albums to listen to before you die, or allegedly should. I'm Ewan Gleadow. I'm a writer at a load of different places, podcaster, journalist, all those good things that I just can't really be bothered to list off anymore. If you're here on this episode, by now you should probably know who hosts it. So, yeah, it's not my problem anymore. As ever, joined by a brilliant guest, Martin Barshai. Thank you so much for joining me. What a
Thanks for
pleasure
having
it is.
me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, honestly. How are you? What have you been listening to recently?
Ooh, a lot of stuff. I listen to a lot of Philip Glass, actually. I think it helps me work. I've been editing a lot of stuff lately for like a documentary project. And I've been using a lot of Philip Glass as the temp track, just as in place for the real score. I've been listening to Radiohead a lot recently. Exit music for a film. I was playing that today. In Thailand, they have these motorcycles for taxis. So you sit on the back of a motorcycle and you don't wear a helmet, and they just drive you through cars, swerving in and out. And I was listening to exit music for a film, Radiohead, and the way it builds is insane. As I'm racing through Bangkok streets on the back of this motorcycle. But yeah,
sounds fantastic.
Yeah, sometimes just classical music, old stuff, like really old.
Nice variety, yeah. Am I right in thinking Radiohead are getting back together? Was that something that happened this year? I feel like they announced something.
I think they're performing a few more times together before they're done, but I don't think they're making any new music. I'm not sure.
Nothing new. No.
Yeah, just Tom York's doing his own solo stuff.
Yes.
And Johnny Greenwood's always doing scoring for movies.
Yeah. Johnny Greenwood's had a great run. It's fantastic. But obviously, we're here to talk about James Murphy, Nancy Wang, LCD Soundsystem, which is fantastic. I think in the past year I've gone from not knowing who LCD Soundsystem are to owning all their records, which is just a nice shift in pace. It's been great.
Nice, yeah.
Because I think what surprised a lot of my friends is that, I've been a music journalist for about 2 years, and I've only been into music for about 2 years, and everybody was a bit shocked. It was like, you've done so much work so far, but don't really like music that much. It's like, yeah, well, in hindsight, obviously that was a bit silly, but you build it up, and then you find new art. And LCD Soundsystem for me was kind of very sudden, very shocking. And obviously we get to talk about the newest album at the time of recording. I mean, hopefully they've got something in the works, but
they keep coming out with singles and like mini albums and remixes to stuff, but not a real album since American Dream, right?
Yeah, so this is their sort of freshest studio album. Obviously they did the Electric Lady sessions, which is phenomenal. But obviously it's been some time since they've sat down with a full set list of original material and thrown it out there. I think the last one was New Body Rumba for White Noise, which was quite good.
Right, yeah, the movie soundtrack for White Noise.
That's the one, yeah. Which got snubbed for an Oscar, as far as I'm aware. But yes, fire through the keynotes, and then there's a quick insert from the book that I'm essentially contractually obliged to read out, even though I've signed no contracts. But fire on through, and then we'll get discussing American Dream. So the keynotes, for those that are listening might not have heard of LCD Soundsystem. American Dream released in 2017. In this iteration of the band, it comprised of James Murphy, Pat Mahoney, Nancy Wang, Tyler Pope, Matt Thornley, Corey Richley, and Al Doyle on production. It's been classed as dance punk, new wave, synth pop, and post punk revival, which is about the general run of the mill for LCD Soundsystem. And literally just before we started recording this, I was double checking my notes. This album topped the Billboard 200 when it first released, which was a bit of a shock because I don't really recall LCD Soundsystem having that much chart success in their original run, but it's always nice to see. So tell me a bit about sort of your memories with American Dream, because obviously I approached you to appear on this because you directed the
American Dream. So I obviously loved the music, and I made that music video, which brought you to me on YouTube. It's just a fan video. It's unofficial. My idea was maybe there's a small chance they'll see the video and maybe repost it or do something cool like that. They never did. I don't blame them. But I did get the attention of their manager, who said he shared it with the band. But the reason I wanted to make that music video, I've always loved their music, and I've seen them live 3 or 4 times now. I saw them once before they broke up. I was only 16 or so, in high school, and I saw them in San Francisco, and I didn't know who they were yet. They were just one of the bands at a Treasure Island music festival, and then they broke up, and then they got back together, and then I started listening to them, and then American Dream comes out, and at this time I was in my early 20s. I had this terrible overnight shift delivering vegan food to people in Los Angeles. It was like a 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. shift, absolutely terrible. And their
Awful.
album had just come out, and so that album kept me going every one of these nights. And I'll listen to it, blasting this music through Santa Monica streets at 5 a.m. How do you sleep? I'm like, I'm not sleeping. But yeah, and then I was like, okay, I have to make a music video for one of these because I'm a filmmaker, and I've made a music video with Philip Glass music. I've made several other music videos for friends, and I was like, all right, if I were to choose one song off this album to make a music video for, it would be American Dream, because that's my life at the moment. I'm like struggling. I'm making minimum wage, driving late at night, and everything about that song is my life at the moment. And it just happened to come out at that time in my life. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna just take elements of where I live, this like bridge, my cars in the music video, and my friends were dancers. My friends were the one character in the music video who's a war veteran. He was my next
Yeah.
door neighbor in Long Beach, California, a town known for a lot of war veterans. He fought in the Iraq War, and so that's a real costume he's wearing. It's a real dog tag he's wearing.
Wow.
So I was like, yeah, I'll just take all the elements of my life at the moment and express it through this video, like the American Dream. So that's how it came
That's
about.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, obviously it's the title of the album as well, and it's, for me, it was a real big shift for LCD Soundsystem, where a lot of their early work, especially on Sound of Silver, felt deeply personal but also very broad at the same time. Something like Someone Great, where there's obviously an influence there that James Murphy's singing about, but knowing who that is a completely new level that we'll probably never know. For American Dream, it feels really, they're exploring the surroundings, they've come back, they've returned, and they're really settling into the sort of overarching American Dream at the core of it. And it's such a shift in tone. Do you think it sort of, I don't know, do you think it's very different to what they were doing before? Because obviously, underlying all of that is the same sort of structures, the sound, the style. On
Hmm.
top of it, though, is a real active choice to try and hit on a few more messages.
Yeah, I think they were more deliberate with this album. Other lyrics and other albums, it's more poetic, more ambiguous as to what they're
Yeah,
saying. But I think in American Dream, they were very on the nose in the sort of pretentious and sarcastic way that they are. Like
yeah,
all their songs, "Oh Baby," "How Do You Sleep?" It's about how do you sleep. "Black Screen," we were staring at a black screen, I think is the
yeah,
lyric or something. So it's like it's very on the nose, and I think a lot of people didn't like that when it came out.
yeah,
I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's not really their style." The music was a bit less dancey than the other albums. It was a bit less geared for the club environment or for like dancing at a festival, and it was more moody and slow and maybe something to brood on. So I think it was a shift for sure from previous albums. But I
yeah,
like it. I like any band that can reinvent themselves, change up style a bit, and take a risk in that sense. Risk
yeah.
isolating an audience that they've developed. Like MGMT did that for like a huge shift in style with the Little Dark Age, and when it came out,
Oh,
everyone
yes,
hated
yeah,
that album. Everyone's like, "Oh, what the hell is this? This is not kids. This is not the youth." And
yeah,
I loved it. I was like, "This is awesome." And now it's like 10 years later, and now it's resurfacing, and now it's become sort
yeah,
of cult, that album. So
yeah.
yeah, I do like it
It's
when
always, yeah,
yeah.
oh yeah. It's always great to see artists kind of fight off stagnation. Obviously, it would have been very easy for LCD Soundsystem to come back and just say, okay, here's the hits again and again. Here's more of the same stuff. But the actual, act of making something that's very different to what they sounded like, but also retaining the same lineup, retaining the same sort of feeling. It's very important that they did that, and I think American Dream's a great job of showcasing that. I did realize, however, that I've not read that horrible insert. Um, a bit of backstory on that. Essentially, Robert Dimry wrote that 1001 Albums book. Every album in the book has an entry. Some of them are all right. Some of them are pretty terrible. Um, this one's all right. This one's, it's decent. We'll fire through that, and then we can get back to talking about American Dream. Um, because there are a couple things in this insert that kind of, definitely the sort of the controversy around the return, which is very strange, but we'll get into that in a moment. Die-hard fans could be forgiven for feeling duped when LCD Soundsystem started releasing new music at the end of 2015, less than 5 years after a hugely hyped farewell gig at New York's Madison Square Garden. But dissenting voices tend to fade quickly when the well of goodwill is this deep. While low-key Return Christmas Will Break Your Heart didn't exactly set pulses racing, the very fact that James Murphy, Nancy Wang, and Al Doyle were back in the game had mouths watering. Trailed by AA side release Call the Police and American Dream, LCD's fourth studio album began fulfilling its promise from the off. Call the Police, Murphy's latest thrilling attempt to rewrite David Bowie's Heroes, brought the party. The title track, the Blissed Out Come Down, I don't even know what that means. A typical slab of frenzy disco funk on next single tonight ticked another LCD box. Much of the joy of LCD's Soundsystem is in familiarity, of style, influence, and delivery. There's barely a beat of American Dream that doesn't hark back to their own old tracks or someone else's. Is that ruling their patch or just repeating tricks? In truth, no one's that bothered about distinction when other voices resents new wave's brittle rasp or change your mind apes the scratchy clatter of Public Image Limited. At the finish, oblique references become direct as Murphy pays tribute to Bowie on the I can't even, I've been a journalist for 3 years. I can't exactly pronounce Elegaic. I probably should have read this before I'd written it down.
All good.
Elegaic, yeah. This is just proving that I've not really got a big vocabulary more than anything. And it's the Elegaic black screen. In a quasi-reframing of 2007 single Someone Great, the late legend is eulogized as between a friend and a father as the album throbs and grinds to a close, ending on an emotional low but a spiritual high. Not even the diehards are shortchanged. A lot to unpack there beyond my lack of wording. But
yeah,
the big thing that stands out for me is that, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same, but when I listened to specifically American Dream, I didn't have any sort of frame of reference for what else it could sound like. I mean, a couple of the tracks on here sound kind of like experimental Talking Heads, and it could slot easily onto like a David Byrne solo release. But American Dream and Tonight particularly sound completely fresh in the sense of what LCD Soundsystem was doing. It's a strange one for the insert to pull out, but yeah, what do you think? Is it kind of calling back to those sort of early days of LCD Soundsystem?
The early days, like which tracks? Because in the
Well, I
early
mean,
days, they were dance music. No, they were DJing
yeah,
parties, and they
exactly.
were just trying to get people
That's
moving.
that's what I thought was weird when they've mentioned, Someone Great, for instance, which obviously isn't the most dance-worthy track, but it's sort of coupled by Us v Them and Get an Occupus, which are pretty heavy on that factor. I
Ah,
don't get where the comparison comes from, but there it is.
yeah, yeah.
um,
I guess I could see it. It's a similar style. Um,
yeah,
I think what drew people to LCD Soundsystem was their lack of normal song structure. Like Losing My Edge was just talking essentially. It wasn't
yeah,
really singing, and there wasn't really a chorus. And people were like, "What the fuck is this?" But
yeah,
now they're like, "Oh, that's why we love LCD Soundsystem." So maybe that's
yeah.
what it's talking about. It's that style where it's just it's a
Maybe,
song,
yeah,
but it's not a real song. It's not. It's an LCD Soundsystem song. It's so much like
yeah.
them that it can't be anything else.
It's edging very close to sort of spoken word material, but never quite getting there because underneath it all is a very very broad, layered sort of instrumental section that kind of drags James Murphy back towards what LCD Soundsystem style is, and it's you know I think this is the third time I've listened to American Dream, and every time I listen to it, it grows on me a little bit more, and tracks take precedence over others. The two sort of constants for me, though, have been American Dream, the title track, and Tonight, which I
Mm.
think Tonight's a stunning track. I think it's absolutely incredible, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's one of those tracks that's kept with me for so long, ever since I first listened to this, and I think more of it's because of the lyrics, which a lot of American sound systems sort of like best tracks. The lyrics are present, they're always there, but it's the beat, it's the rhythm of it. Like Beat Connections probably is one of my favorite tracks from them, and it's from just the constant underneath it. What do you think American Dream is more lyrically present than other albums that LCD Soundsystem have made?
Ah, It's very minimal, actually, in terms of
Yeah,
lyrics. I feel like a lot of their songs are very repetitive um, in American Dream compared to other albums.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it feels more stripped down lyrically
yeah.
to me. I haven't really analyzed the lyrics, but
No,
yeah,
no, me
I
either.
don't know.
It's
Feels more of like a minimalist album in terms of how much they're trying to say with each song.
yeah, and it's I mean, if we flash our minds back to when it was first announced, those that immediate sort of, oh, we're going to release a new album, caused quite the wave of controversy, which was I don't know. I mean, I wasn't really like, I didn't know who LCD Soundsystem were at the time because I think I was about 15. But
Mm.
what was it about getting an album like released and bringing the band back together that proved so controversial? It seems, we've got the benefit of
Ah,
hindsight and looking back, but it seems very
it's
strange to get
because
up in arms.
you saw the what's the documentary called about their
Oh,
last
shut up and play
performance?
the hits. Yeah,
Yeah, you saw that,
yeah.
right?
Oh
So
yeah, I
like
loved it.
they
It's
set
incredible.
yeah, I love it too. It's a great doc, and it's also very minimal too. It's just James
Mm,
Murphy, an interview, and then a lot of concert footage. But the thing is, they made a promise to the world that this is their last show, and people believed in
yeah,
that idea, and they committed to it, and they all were brokenhearted, and they felt like it was a relationship that was dead and no longer able to revive. And then they come back together 5 years later for whatever reason, and everyone felt lied to a bit.
yeah,
You make a promise or like you break up with somebody and they come back into your life and you're like, what the fuck? But I think American Dream was that attempt to like reestablish the connection with the audience
yeah,
to say, look, we screwed up. We didn't really mean to break up, but here we are, we're back and we're making music.
yeah. Do you
And I
think
think it
do
was
you
a
think it
very
was
good reentry.
successful? Yeah, re-entry. That's
Yeah,
the most important thing. It's
it's hard to define success in any artistic
yeah,
profession, of course, but I think it was successful in that before that album came out, I didn't hear LCD Soundsystem music when I went to a cafe or in the shopping mall or at like
yeah.
some Old Navy department store, whatever. But now I hear it. Now I hear the music.
Oh yeah,
It's like mainstream. It's become a thing that's in white noise in a Netflix movie. It's become a
yeah,
thing that you hear when you're at the airport. So it's like I
yeah.
think that album was like, okay, we're back, we're making more music, and we're gonna be this big giant mainstream thing that I think they were afraid to become when they broke up. I think that's why they broke up. He
Yeah,
says in the interviews, he's like, I don't want to become this thing where it's like it's out of my control and we're just too big, and anywhere I go I'm just bombarded with people. And he's like, I don't want to
yeah.
become that. I want a normal life. But I think he
It's
got bored of
exactly
that
that.
normal life.
I
Like
mean,
we
it's
all do.
it's kind of without a doubt, and I think it's I I remember watching the Stephen Colbert interview he did, where he said, I'm turning my back on it, and everybody at the time was kind of like, I don't get why you're doing that.
Mm,
And I remember watching it and thinking, I've got such massive respect for artists that can say, I want no more of this. I'm pretty much done. Not creatively, but in the public sense of being in that public. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and pour water at the same time. Being in the public eye and kind of, you know, there is a certain level of expectation in a band where it's, you've got to release, you've got to perform, and we're seeing it now where LCD Sound System. I don't know if you saw the recent post that James Murphy made. It might not be
no.
recent anymore, but I think it was a few months ago. He said, he's not going to do any interviews until somebody comes to him with something interesting to ask him about. He's not going to
Ah,
set dates for releasing things or performing. They're just going to go with the flow, and I think that's key to keeping it fresh. And I do think that, in a sense, kind of makes up for the broken promise of returning.
mm.
It's more of a, we're just going to perform when we feel like it, when we feel there is something creative. Obviously, they did was it the Bowery that they've done? That might be a UK venue. To be honest, my brain is scattered.
There's one
But
in New York too. Yeah,
yes, yeah, they did a residency there, didn't they?
I'm not sure about that, but probably
Oh yes,
they're a New York-based band. Yeah.
they are. Yes, sorry, I was. Um, yeah, they did. I don't know why I'm saying they probably did. I know they did because I was genuinely thinking I could get a flight to America and buy a ticket and then just fly back. And it's like, you can't do that,
They're touring.
because
I saw they were touring
yeah,
this
yeah,
year. Yeah, you should go see them. I saw them.
I'd love
Last time I
to.
saw them was I think 3 years ago, right before
Yeah.
COVID. I think I
Oh,
saw
nice.
them
Yeah.
probably. I don't know if it was a music festival because I've seen them at Outside Lands. I've seen them at Treasure Island. I saw them in
Yeah.
Austin, Texas. They were just doing their own show at the racetrack.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, nice.
amazing every time. And live, they're better. It's like their music makes you want to
Oh,
dance, and
yeah.
the whole audience is grooving, and they're dancing, and they're great with the audience. The way they set up their playlists, and
Yeah.
how the disco ball turns on right as the song beat drops, and Dance Yourself Clean. It's beautiful.
It sounds amazing. I mean, it's obviously like
Yeah, yeah,
I'm based in the UK, so it's if I know for a fact that if it's like the bucket list for me of artists that I want to see. It's kind of like I'm down to the last few already, and LCD Soundsystem's on there with like Nick Cave and stuff. But
yeah,
it's I know for a fact as soon as if they head to the UK, who knows if they are. But
yeah, yeah.
I'd have
Do
to
it
sort
now.
of.
Do it while you're young.
Oh,
Do it.
I'm gonna have to.
I'm almost 30, man. So it's like for me to see music, it has to be some band
Yeah,
I really, really want to see. The last band I saw was The Strokes, and that was a
oh,
bucket list
nice.
thing for me. And I'm
Yeah,
living in Thailand, and I've been here for 2 years.
yeah,
And I heard The Strokes were performing at Outside Lands, California, in
yeah.
20, I think it was 2021. And I just bought a ticket right away, flew my ass back to America for the first time in 2 years since COVID, and then saw The Strokes. It was
Oh, wow.
beautiful.
Was
Yeah,
it?
they're so good with the
That's
audience, man. The way they work,
yeah,
the way Julian Casablancas just like makes these strokes in between songs, in between tracks.
yeah,
It's just like he has the audience in his grasp, and then and then the song starts and it kicks in, and they're so clean. They don't screw up, not one mistake.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because
it's
that was
great.
off the back of their new album, which I forgot the name of. But I mean, I say new. It came out in 2020, which is it's mad that that's years ago now, which is
Yeah,
terrifying. But it's what you say about the sort of
2023 now.
the 2023 terrible. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's like for me with bucket list stuff. I mean, this year I'm seeing Pulp twice, which is like
Okay.
the ultimate for me. Pulp's the top, very top for me.
Mm,
It's the whole point of this
nice.
podcast is littering 1,001 albums and then saying the different class is the best out of all of them. It's been a very long process. Um, but seeing them twice, I know for a fact I'm going to enjoy myself. It's something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. But I think I've put LCD Soundsystem in that box of I'll never see them. And then if the opportunity arises, it's kind of like I've got to go and see it without a doubt.
Yeah.
Um,
You living in London, or where are you at?
no, thankfully not. I wouldn't survive down
Okay.
there. I'm up in the northeast. It's kind of like no man's land up here. So it's the closest venue we've got that gets big releases like that is maybe Manchester or Leeds. So it means
Okay.
like a
Yeah,
2 hour
yeah.
train journey down.
They should be
It's
headed out there soon.
I'd
If
hope
not
so.
Manchester, then definitely London. They're gonna
Oh
hit
yeah,
that up.
I'd
They
be
love
happy to
London.
hit
They
it.
did a
Like
whole session there, didn't they? Like a whole
yes,
recording
yeah.
session.
It's the only gig I've got in London. I'm off to see Blur, which I didn't think I'd
Oh,
get tickets
nice.
for, but somehow I managed to pull them out. Um,
Wow.
But honestly, I mean, it's LCD sound system. Obviously, we went a little off topic, but it does bring us to the big point of live music and LCD sound system. It's kind of
Mm.
the big thing for me with LCD sound system is how great they sound live in the footage I've seen, and especially on those studio demos, like the London sessions and the Electric Lady sessions. Incredible, and you can see that leave its imprint in their live music. Obviously, that hook from Tonight Home, and then the cover of Chic, which I can't remember the song. What am I going to do? Completely gone. Anyway, there's a triple on that album where they link it all together, and that's what they do in the live shows now. It's amazing.
Hmm.
Really is incredible. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and
Like they'll take the
it's
ending of one song, the outro,
yes,
and
yeah,
the beat continues, and then boom, the next song starts. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
They
perfect,
do
and
that.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, their style really lends itself to that as well. I feel like a lot of the tracks on American Dream, for instance, feel kind of ready to be slotted into different places, or you can really play with where these songs land. I mean, the
Mm.
B side for me with Tonight, Call the Police, and American Dream, that stretch is just it's stunning. I think that's probably the
Hmm.
strongest part of the album for me. It's those three tracks are just remarkable, really, really remarkable. Like up there with the best of LCD Sound System's work. Um, what do you think of the opening track? I don't tend to mention many tracks on the album, which I feel like is a terrible decision for a podcast based on music and albums. But Oh Baby, for instance, there's a very it's very heavy. in the sense of
Mm.
the beat that lines under it. It's explosive, it's loud, it's very brash. Is that real? Like, I mean, if you think about sort of when that album released, it's setting up LCD Soundsystem for that next listener. They play it straight away. They've got that heavy set. What do you think that does? What do you think that's sort of the right opening for them?
Yeah, I think so. I think it establishes the theme of the album. It's gonna be heavy on
Yeah,
bass. It's gonna have like hard beats. It's gonna
yeah,
be a slower pace. I think the Oh Baby's slower tempo. I'm not sure the tempo, but it sounds slower to me.
yeah,
But yeah, and it's more of a ballad, right? It's like Oh Baby, and
yeah,
and the whole album tends to be kind of like a ballad. And then it also closes in a similar like deep electronics like what do you call it, like a distorted bass and black screen
yes,
that's
yeah. On
there
black
in Oh
screen.
Baby, that's there in How Do You Sleep. It's like black screen is doof, 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 doof,
Yeah,
right? And Oh Baby
yeah,
is doof, doof. It's like a similar sound, I don't know, it's kind of
yes,
like
yeah,
symphonic the way they constructed the album, I guess.
yeah.
And Oh Baby
Oh,
is a good
without a doubt.
opener. Yeah.
And it's obviously just to flip it to the other side with black screen, which is I think it's a fairly obvious sort of tribute to David Bowie. Um, it's a very good song, regardless of its tribute or its mentioning of it. But it's from interviews that James Murphy's given afterwards, and sort of I remember one where he listed off his favorite tracks where he did Jump Into the Fire with Harry Nilsson. I think it was
Mm.
Young Americans by Bowie that he played at the time. And just hearing him explain that relationship that he had with Bowie, because obviously he produced the track for the next day, which ended up on the sort of B-side list. It's very powerful, and it's one of the few times I can think of an artist where they've paid tribute to an artist that means a lot to them, and it hasn't come off as copying, which is sort of the best way to put it. I think of a lot. I mean, to put it back to David Bowie, for instance, that the Bob Dylan one that he does on Hunky Dory, which I spoke about on a different episode of this podcast, is very very strange, and it's mocking the tribute he made to Woody Guthrie, which was, it lacks the genuinity of something like Black Screen, which is really sort of open and it's very intimate, and I think that's what LCD Soundsystem have a lot of the time, and I don't think people really sort of appreciate how open they are. Something like Losing My Edge or Someone Great, although sort of the meaning's obscured, the actual connection to it, the emotions of it, very clear. Um,
Mm.
and I think that's the big thing for American Dream for me is that they've struck about. Sorry, the sun is right in my eyes and it's just blinding me.
It's
Um,
very dramatic lighting,
it's
like
oh yeah. If I
almost
go
like
like
you're
that,
in The
yeah,
Godfather.
it's
High
great.
contrast ratio, they say in
I've,
filmmaking.
I've got Roger Deakins doing the cinematography for this episode. Um, the thing
Nice.
about American Dream for me is, I think we spoke about the sort of the backlash they got for returning the David Bowie influences. It's a
Mm.
very emotional time to be in the band, and you can see that just flicker through. Something like Tonight for me, I know I mentioned it earlier and I didn't really explain why. That that song terrifies me. It's probably
Mhm.
one of my favorite LCD Soundsystem songs. Um, and I actually got sent it on my birthday. A friend of mine sent me the song on my birthday and said, you're in this song." I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Oh, you're getting old." It's like, "Don't say that. Don't say that. I'm not getting that old." But it's such a beautiful track, and I think that is the most direct LCD Soundsystem get with addressing the return and the controversy around it. Is they're getting older, they're getting on, they still have things to prove, and whether or not they've made a promise, they still have something to give. Um, I think it's quite powerful, especially when it's sort of right after How Do You Sleep, which is beautiful,
Mhm.
really, really stunning.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. And
Yeah,
the James Murphy, he loves singing about that. Getting older, losing your
yeah,
friends. Where are my friends tonight? Christmas will break your heart. He says, "What if they don't love you anymore?" It's
yeah,
beautiful the way he expresses this, like very melodramatic but very honest human emotion about being
yeah,
lonely, about getting older, about not fitting in anymore, not keeping up with the trends of the young people. The kids are coming up from behind and losing my edge.
yes,
It's like their thematic element, right? It's always like,
yeah.
how do I keep up with the times?
It's kind of ironic though that in suggesting that they don't know how to keep up with the times, they're actually one step ahead of everyone else with the music that they're actually creating. It's
Right, right.
the losing my edge stuff. I mean, I was very lucky. I got the live recording of "Shut Up and Play the Hits," the Madison Square Garden. I got the record, which was it's a stunning listen, unbelievable. Um,
Mm.
losing my edge on there is filled with such venom and such nostalgia, and I feel like that bleeds into American Dream, where it's I mean, I'm from the UK. I can only sort of guess as to what the American Dream sort of messaging and imagery is, but it's a long form statement in America. The American Dream, that what they're living up to. Do you think that's the core of this album? Do you think that's what they're exploring here, that American Dream? Because I feel like the only other interaction I've had with that as a sort of style or as a presence is Hunter S. Thompson with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I feel like it's very critical of the American Dream. I feel like
Yeah,
all art that I've read from the US has been very critical of this idea that the American dream should be pursued.
definitely. Yes. I love Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
And I do think, yes, American Dream is not about the positivity of pursuing the American dream. It's a critique on the American dream.
yeah,
It's it's that America was founded on the American dream, and people came as immigrants for centuries to America pursuing the American dream. And now, where is the American dream? It's like this postmodern surrealist interpretation of where the American dream is now. That's what I
yeah,
loved about the song and the album. It's like they're all
yeah,
they're obviously very smart artists, the band, and they know what they're doing, and they know where they are in the world, and they know they're kind of at the forefront of music and the industry
yeah,
and art in general. And so I think it was funny and appropriate. Uh, it's like sarcastic and on the nose in the way that they are to question what the American dream is, because they found it. They're living it, right? They're the
yeah,
ones embodying it, and so they're expressing all this stuff. And then all their songs on the track is uh, like American Dream to me sounds like it's about the failure of the American dream. Or like in the music video that you watched, it's like
yes, yeah,
everyone's fucked up on the American dream. Like there's a salesman, there's a war veteran, there's a waitress, who's making shit tips. It's like,
yeah,
so yeah, I love the critique that they are providing on the American dream,
yeah,
because not many people question it anymore. I think it's lost its place in the conversation of what is America. I think America has
yeah,
become a very weird and like, I don't know, socially, politically fucked up place throughout the
yeah,
years. But people have forgotten the idea that America was founded on, the American dream. And so LCD Soundsystem comes out with that album, and
yeah.
they're pointing a finger at it for the first time in a long time, I think.
And you can see that in the track titles and obviously the tracks themselves. Something like "Oh Baby." I mean, the music video for that, which I think was Ryan Johnson directed, that is about an old couple that invent teleportation, which is a
Mm,
real fascinating little story to put in underneath that. But it does kind of represent that sort of older America, the love between older couples, and the American dream that they have reached. Essentially, that's the success story of the American dream. And then you flip to American Dream, the title track, and obviously you did the video for that, the fan one, which is genuinely fucking stunning. Like we didn't talk about that enough when you first mentioned it. It's an extraordinary music video to accompany to a track. It's
thank you.
That's no problem. It really is extraordinary, and it feels like every day. And I feel like I did an episode not last week but the week before, and I did a Lana Del Rey album, and somebody asked, I don't know why I said somebody, it was Carson, who's frequent on the show. He said, "How does it feel from the UK perspective to actually connect with music that's inherently American or studying American
Mm,
concepts and ideas?" And it's down to the artist and the sort of creativity of whoever's behind the music video or the production, the style, to make sure that it's not only deeply personal for the area, but also universally understandable. And I feel like that's the staple of American Dream here. It's
mm.
the same thing as Daft Punk is playing at my house,
Yeah, yeah,
Daft
yeah.
Punk at the time, losing my edge with the CBGB. People that are in the know what that is. They know what that is,
Right,
regardless of
right.
whether they've been or not. And it's a testament to sort of American sound system, American Dream, and LCD sound system, that
Mm,
they can pull that sarcasm and make it sort of universally known that that is what
mm,
they're saying and this is what it's about. Even if they've, the American Dream kind of angle, the shit tips, the war veterans, it's a universal thing. It happens everywhere. but it's
Mm.
so deeply personal on this album that it cuts through. It really gets to the point of that sarcasm, which I think is more present here than sort of on the previous albums. I feel like there is a genuine, something like I Can Change, which is, very, very well made. But at the same time, does feel a little sort of genuine. It feels like there is a little bit of genuine thought behind I will change for that reason, rather than something like, Tonight, which is very, not bitter, but getting towards it. Um, yeah, it's a very, very, very entertaining album, and very, very strong as well as far as comebacks go. We think about how many artists have sort of mounted their comeback album, and it's, well, fell on deaf ears, to put it nicely. I can think of very few artists that have successfully launched an album that is at the time this good, and also cements them for having a reason to come back.
Right. Yeah.
But as
Um,
far as that goes, I think that kind of leans into the legacy of the album. Obviously, it's hard to talk about legacy when it's been about, when was this released? About 6 years ago?
2017, no?
2017.
20, I think it's 2017.
Yeah, 5, 6 years
Yeah.
ago. I'm terrible with maths, but 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, 20, yes, 6.5, because it was released in the
Yeah,
fall of 2017.
yes, it was.
Yeah.
So it is too early to talk about the legacy, but I made that a requirement on my list for every episode.
Yeah, it's like,
Um,
okay, the little Dark Age MGMT came out before
yeah,
American Dream, no? And now
I
it's
think it did.
finding
Yeah,
its
yeah,
like limelight. Like I'm
yeah,
seeing their tracks on TikTok. I'm seeing the new generation,
yeah,
the Gen Zs and younger, they're enjoying it as like this
yeah.
hipster like nostalgic thing. Even though in our
Yeah.
time, I don't know how old you are, but when it came
I'm
out, I
the
think I was.
tender old age of 23.
Oh wow, okay, okay. So you Gen Z?
I don't know, because I was
I,
I was born in 1999. Like, I was born on Christmas Day, so I don't know where that
okay.
places me.
Maybe you're like right on the border, millennial Gen
I'm
Z.
I'm a
I don't know.
yeah, I'm a millennial. Yeah,
But
sure.
anyways, so the younger kids, they're like, I don't know, 21 and below, they're enjoying
That'll
the
do.
stuff
Yeah,
that when we were teens that we kind of overlooked. And now
mm,
they're rehashing it, resurfacing it, and now they're making that into their TikTok viral videos,
yeah,
using it as sound bits. And one of those things was the MGMT album I'm talking about. And the only reason I mention it because I was so shocked to see that album resurface in a like
yeah.
in the way that it has, in this like social media new age kind of way. Because when it came out, I knew it was great, and I was like, damn, why haven't more people listened to this? And this is exactly how I feel about American Dream. When it came out, I was
Yeah.
like, damn, why haven't more people listened to this? And I think in 5 years from now, people are like, oh shit, this album was kind of genius. It was like, it meant a lot in terms of music, in terms of LCD sound system.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
It's very important, not only in re-establishing LCD sound system, but it's rather telling that this is kind of, chart-wise and commercially, one of the most successful albums they made. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Straight to the first in the Billboard charts in America. It was the first. Well, it was top in Scotland as well, but I don't know. I think as far as the UK went as well, the reception over there was pretty good. But obviously, I've got a really strange relationship with the charts where I don't pay attention to them, and I don't really think they're that interesting or useful. But at the same time, it's, when an album that I like hits the top, it's like, oh, that's great to see. Um, when
Yeah.
American Dream dropped, it was very high up on those top 50 lists that critics always like to do. It was,
Uh-huh.
I think Pitchfork put it at 12th, Uncut put it first, NME put it fifth. I can't think of. I mean, obviously, we've got the benefit of hindsight again, but that stretch of the self-titled album to This Is Happening, that incredible
Uh-huh.
triple, I can't imagine or even think that they got the same sort of reception that American Dream did, because LCD Soundsystem have always felt like the underdogs, even with that chart success on this new album. I say new, but it's been 6.5 years. It still
Mm.
feels like they're the underdogs, and I feel like that's very important to their style and their sound. They always feel like you've discovered them rather than they've been thrown at you.
Right. No, I agree. Because even, yeah, like you ask a random person that's not a musician or an artist, or they're
Mm,
not involved in the arts at all. Do
yeah,
you know LCD Sound System? Never heard of them. and then you play one of their songs that might be the most famous song, and they say, "Oh yeah, I've heard that somewhere before,"
Yeah.
but they're not super mainstream yet, and I don't think they will ever be mainstream in the terms of like Ariana Grande
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
Justin Bieber. It's kind of okay. I think I'm no music historian. I'm not even a musician, but I think they're like Radiohead. I think
Yeah.
their career trajectory will resemble Radiohead. I think
Yeah.
Radiohead was this very cool band that kind of reinvented the way music can be listened to, and like the way songs can be structured, and the way that like uh, beats can be like unsyncopated. Is that the right word? Where
I think so.
you
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean.
like the
If it's not the right word,
vocals and the
then
drums, like just syncopate. I don't know what it is, but they have all these tracks where like things don't even sound good at first, but
yeah.
then as you're listening more and more, you're like, okay, I see what they're doing, and then it clicks in your head, and then all of a sudden this song is amazing. And I think that's LCD as well, but
Yeah.
20 years later. So I
Oh yeah.
think they'll have the same trajectory as that. They'll have the trajectory of like um, Velvet Underground or like any of these bands that came up in a like when their songs were released, they weren't that popular. 10 years
Yeah.
later, 20 years later, they're the things that everyone on TikTok is posting about. So
Yeah.
I think that's the way. It's kind of like filmmaking. You know, it's the same idea. It's like filmmakers, they make something amazing that everyone overlooks, like Inside Llewyn Davis, a great movie, and kind of related to our conversation because it was about the
Yeah.
birth of folk music in New York City, which led to Bob Dylan, which led to all the stuff we're talking
Yeah.
about. But yeah, that film came out and no one liked it. I mean, the Coen brothers fans liked it, but no one really watched it. Didn't make money, didn't make profit. It did start Oscar Isaac's career,
It
but
did.
today
It did.
people refer to that film as a masterpiece. Today people say, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's one of the best films that came out during that decade." So I love how artists can communicate to a future time that doesn't
Yeah.
exist yet, but they know they're making stuff for the ages. They know they're not making stuff for today.
Yeah.
So that's what I've always loved about LCD Soundsystem.
Yes. I couldn't have put it better myself. It's that faith in your sound at the time to last essentially decades. You know, LCD Sound System's debut was 2005. We're nearly
Hmm.
20 years on, and it's rather telling that people still listen to Yeah, Losing My Edge, You City's a Sucker. They're still relevant, even more so now. It's a real grand faith. It's incredible. But to drag us through to American Dream and just kind of wrap things up, fantastic. Yeah, let's wrap it up. What's the best track on American Dream?
Ooh, best
Oh,
track.
yeah,
Ah, tough question. Tough question. All right, my favorite track was American Dream, the title track.
yeah,
That's why I made a music video about it.
yeah.
But now that I've made a music video about it, I can't listen to that song anymore. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know how to
so is
explain this
that?
phenomenon where you listen
Yeah,
to a song so much when you're editing this music video, you listen to it 1,000 times, and it's like, okay, I
yeah.
can't listen to it anymore.
It's
I
gone.
literally
That's
can't.
it.
But I love the song. But I think
Yeah,
besides that, I've always loved "How Do You Sleep," and I've always
yeah,
loved "Black Screen." Black Screen for how minimal it is, how like softly it just hits you. It's kind of like Dawn Chorus, that Tom York song, where it's
yes,
like
yeah,
everything just sounds right and it's like delicately placed and the bass is nice. I don't know. I love that song. But How Do You
yeah,
Sleep? I don't know. I guess I'm a somewhat insomniac sometimes. I can't sleep well, and that song just fucking spoke to me. I was
yeah,
driving late nights when I was listening to that album, 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. shifts, and that song was like, all right, this is my life. How do you sleep? How do you sleep? I'm making minimum wage. I'm driving late at night. I don't sleep. And that song to
yeah,
me spoke to me and attracted me to that album. So I think, I don't know, musically, I don't know what I'm saying,
yeah,
but in terms of like what drew me to that album, what made me think that James Murphy is in my head, and the lyrics he writes communicate everything in my life. It was How Do You Sleep
yeah.
and American Dream.
I think that's the big thing, isn't it? There's always a track on an album that just speaks to someone. and it's
Yeah.
difficult to explain how or why in that sort of initial just hearing it, but you can just know. And for me, that was Tonight, and I think it's the big chunk, the last verse, where it's you're getting older, you've been in the background, that sort of thing. But it when I first listened to it, I thought it was reassuring. It's like you've got plenty of time, and the more I listen to it, it's kind of like you are getting older. You've kind of got to start cementing yourself now. And it's obviously, I mentioned earlier, it was a track that terrified me, and it still does. If I'm having a
Okay.
lazy day where I know I've got things to do, I'll put that on and I'll hear, you're missing a party that you'll never get over. You hate the idea that you're wasting your youth. It's like, yeah, I'm 23. I've got a couple of years where I can call myself young. I should probably get a move on.
Yeah, I feel you,
Which is a
man.
mad,
Yeah.
mad horror to have.
But like
But
it's crazy because you're feeling that at 23. Imagine
yeah,
what I'm feeling that I'm 29 on the
mm,
cusp of 30. Imagine what
yeah,
James Murphy is feeling. What is he,
at
50?
50, yeah,
Imagine what
it's
our grandparents feel at 70, 80. It's like you're
yeah,
getting older. I promise you that you're getting older. And it's everyone that's not fucking, I don't know, a teenager and younger, they hear that lyric and they get freaked out like you got freaked out.
yeah.
I got freaked out hearing
I
that song.
And I think that's the most important part of American Dream for me. Like there are so many great tracks on it, but Tonight has stuck out because it clicked something in my brain where I was like, okay, that song makes a lot of sense. It's got a really good point. I should actually act on that.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's like anytime I feel a bit lazy or sluggish, I'm like, you've only got one shot at this. You've got to push on through. Just give it a go, because I
Yeah.
feel like it's a kind of it's not a sad track, but it's very reflective on the sense of that's it. You get one go around, and
Yeah.
if you
And
don't take
maybe
advantage of
maybe
it, you are
that's
going
the
to get
theme of the
badgered.
album that I haven't
Yeah,
realized until our conversation. It's about waking up from the American dream, but it's
American
more
Dream.
like the American nightmare.
Yeah.
It's wake
Oh
up with
yeah.
somebody near you at someone else's place. You took acid and looked at the mirror.
Yeah.
Maybe that album, that's what it's about. It's not about living the American dream, but waking up from it. And then
Yeah.
once we're out of it, once we've woken up from it, what do we have and where are we?
It's
Maybe that's what it's about.
spot on. Yeah. It's the last lyrics of Tonight, where it's all the embarrassing stuff's been deleted. You've got a clean slate. Now's the time to make a shot of it. Yeah.
Mm.
It's about waking up. Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow.
Mm.
Well, at least we've solved that one. I feel like that's one of the few albums on this list that we've actually figured out the point of. Perfect. Do
Right.
you want to plug your sort of social medias? I've got it
Sure.
slides along the bottom. Brilliant. If you've got
Yeah.
Twitter or work that
My
you want to plug,
new Instagram, I was social media adverse for years. Recently made a new Instagram, Barshai. It's my last name, BARSHAI_. Very simple. And I have a
yeah,
website. You can check out my scripts, my films, martinbarshai.com. Very straightforward.
perfect. Fantastic. And you can find me in all the usual places on Twitter at Ewan Gleadow. Don't listen to this pod on Twitter as well. And then my writing at Cult Following, Daily Star, Daily Mirror, Clapper, loads of other places. They're all going along the bottom now. If you just Google my name, that'll do. But no, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me on talking
Hey,
about LCD
thank you, man.
Soundsystem, because
Yeah, I love talking about it.
they've got like 4 other albums on there, which is great.